Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com. Hello and welcome to episode 85. 85 is a good number. You know, I had a thought today. I am 15 episodes away from the big 100. What am I going to do when the writer's journey turns 100? I have no idea, but I guess I better start thinking about that because I think it's going to happen here pretty soon, like in January, February. So that's kind of cool. So quick update on how things are going with me. Things are going great. This has been the best October I can think of, and certainly since I became a writer, or at least since I started law school. So things are it's just so relaxed. It's weird. Like I wake up and it's like, well, I don't have all this mountain of stress bearing down on me. So writing wise, things are going great. I am gearing up to start my next book. And actually, as this episode goes live, I probably will be writing it. I'll probably have started the first draft or first few words. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But in personal life, things are going good. Law school's going good. I am in the process of working on my midterm. The professor kind of gave us a softball. So she's like, oh, instead of giving you just one bite at the apple, I'll give you 2 bites at the apple. And I'll allow you to take home a writing assignment that you guys have to turn in by the end of October. So that's kind of cool. And doesn't happen that often. So I got to take home a writing assignment, got to do some research and get that written. But it's actually not that bad, surprisingly. So not worried about that. I am in the process of getting ready to teach my next class, which will be the first week of November. So I am in the process of reviewing the material for that and making sure that, I have everything organized. I got some feedback from the first class that I taught earlier this month, and it was all positive for the most part. There were a few things that some of the students wanted clarification on and so on and so forth. But for me personally and my teaching style, they loved it. They thought it was very effective. So that's really the highest compliment you can give me is that anything that I do is practical. That's pretty important. And then, just figuring out how to organize everything, trying to stay organized I don't know why, it's been a challenge for me lately. And I'm in the process. I talked last month about how I'm kind of going through my processes and figuring out what can be streamlined and what's my strategy going to be for 2020 and so on and so forth. So that's a quick update on how things are going with me. I have, when this episode goes live, I will have filmed and uploaded 2 weeks worth of Author Level Up videos. I finally got around to that. So now I think that takes me videos into the slot through the middle of November, and I will plan on having a couple of more filming sessions next week. So that should get me through middle of December-ish. But I've got my content planned out through the end of the year, and I've got my next season for Author Level Up finalized, which is going to be how to improve your craft. So not so much like, what steps do you take to do this, but more technical nuts and bolts. How do you actually study the craft of writing, right? How do you actually read like a writer? What are some challenges and techniques and tips that you can use to write better fiction? That is going to be the topic of my next Author Level Up season, which I think is perfect for January because a lot of people are going to start thinking, you know what, I want to follow my dream, or I want to renew my commitment to writing, or I just want to set a goal to write better fiction this year. And this video series is going to be aimed at that. So my main topic that I wanted to cover today is I wanted to circle back to the strategy that I was talking about last week, because as I was listening to the episode, I was driving to work and I was listening to last week's episode. I was like, I probably could have summarized everything again at the end of the episode because I threw a lot at you. But this is really, really important for me because this is what's going to be guiding me for the next 5 years, right? And so it's kind of a major pivot for me in my career and in my business. And so I need to make sure that I am explaining it in a way that is clear, not just to me, but is also clear to everyone else, so that when you see me doing things, it's not wait, hold on a second. Why is he doing that? It's oh, okay, I get it. That's part of the strategy that he talked about a year ago or 2 years ago, right? So my 2020 strategy, my strategy up until this point has been focusing on my readers. How do I serve them? Focusing on how can I make a profit with my writing? Not so much be profitable, but how can I make products that make money? And then expenses. So making sure that I'm managing my expenses well, and then growth. What types of products can I create? What types of books, courses, videos, podcast episodes can I create to add value to my portfolio, my brand, which ultimately serves who? Readers. That is the most important thing, right? Now, what I'm doing is I'm shifting, right? So instead of focusing on just those four things, I'm going to be focusing on a number of other things that are going to help me get to the next level of my writing career. The first is to become a world-class content creator, or I'm calling this try to aim to become one of the most prolific writers of all time, which is a very bold goal. I know that. I'm not being arrogant, but why not? I've learned in my life, if you ask for the moon and the stars, even if you get a couple clouds, that can be a lot, right? So how can I become one of the most prolific writers of all time? Specifically, one of the most prolific African-American writers of all time? Well, that involves creating a lot of content. So my goal over the next 5 years is to get to 1,000 pieces of intellectual property, whether that be books, podcast episodes, blog episodes, all content that's high quality, that adds value to whoever it is that I'm serving, whether it be readers who are reading my books, or whether it be writers who are listening to this podcast or to Author Level Up or Writing Tip of the Day. How can I provide content that is a lot of content and that is high quality, so that I can become one of the most prolific writers of all time? Okay. The second pillar that I'm going for is how can I become a world-class marketer? So these past 5 years, this year, I think I'm going to come within striking distance of making a profit with my writing, which is crazy because I haven't made a profit over the last 5 years, but I'm almost there this year. And so how can I start focusing more on the marketing piece, right? Because the past 5 years, I didn't really focus on marketing. I just focused on following whatever it was I wanted to follow, creating products just to see what happened, spending time to engage with my fans and figure out what was important to them. And so now, how do I pivot? And how do I start balancing and introducing more marketing into my workflow and into my life, right? So that I can start making more money and I can start flipping switches and monetizing things, right? Because I have not necessarily been doing that up until this point. How do I do that? How do I become a world-class marketer? How do I take the energy and the passion that I had for learning how to write better faster, right? Learning how to take a process that took me 18 months to write a novel and get that down to 7 days, right? How do I take that and apply that to marketing? I think some interesting things can happen, right? I'm not necessarily a marketer by nature. And so how do I learn what I need to learn to sell more books so that I can get that 6-figure sales mark, right? That's going to be pretty important. And you're going to see me spend a lot of resources and time on that, because I think it's time for me to start moving in that direction and marrying the content creation that I've developed with better marketing. And how do I share that with you all? How do I share that with writers and help them make more money so that they can support their families and so that they can enable some freedoms and allow them to do things in their lives that they haven't been able to do before? That's my second goal, become a world-class marketer. Third goal is to become a technology-driven writer. Now, what does that mean? Technology, meaning how can I use technology to streamline the amount of time it takes me to create content so that I can create better content faster, right? And how do I use technology to help me become a better version of myself? How do I master my writing app? How do I get involved with things that will help me automate or outsource what I'm doing? So most recently, this past couple of days, I've been working with a developer. And what we've been doing is figuring out how to automate the process of creating the writer's journey. So I thought about outsourcing it to an assistant, but that didn't make sense because this is a 15 to 30 minute per week podcast, right? And I'm going to pay someone probably about $1 a minute. So $15 to $30 a week in order to edit this podcast and upload it to my podcast provider. It just didn't make sense. That's really expensive. It was like $1,500 a year for a product that doesn't really make me money. I do the writer's journey just because it's documenting my process, right? So what I decided instead was, what if I developed an Apple script that from the moment I started recording and stopped recording, it actually automated everything. So it applied all the editing effects that I need. It saved the file to the proper directory on my computer, and then it opened up Libsyn, my podcast provider, uploaded it to Libsyn, and did all of that without me having to do a thing. What would that look like? And so we've been working on that. And the estimate that he gave me to do that, he could streamline my entire process by about 48% in terms of the time it takes me to create this podcast. That was about $300, right? So that's an example of how can I use technology to become a better version of myself. So becoming a technology-driven writer, that's number 3. Number 4 is to become a data-driven marketer. Data is going to be the key to the future. And so how can I use data to drive all of my decisions, or at least all of the important decisions, right? So my goal is 100% of my non-writing decisions to be driven by data. What does that look like? I don't know yet. And can I make 50% of my writing decisions driven by some kind of data? Now, I'm not saying I want to write to market or do any of that, but can I do that? Can I hit those goals? Can I link data to every decision that I make as a writer? If I can't do that, can I link data to every major decision that I do as a writer? And I'm going to give you an example of how I've been doing this over the past week or so here when I talk about my next book, because it's going to be my experimenting ground for this. So become a data-driven writer, because data is the future. And then number 5 is become the writer of the future. So what does that mean? It means embracing new technologies. It means talking to people who I wouldn't normally talk to who are not in the publishing industry to see if there's liquid knowledge that I can bring back as a writer. It means experimenting. It means talking out loud about things that might fail, talking out loud about things that might be ahead of their time, but still bringing attention and awareness to them, because that is what we're going to need in order to compete in the future. The value proposition of writers is going to be a lot different than it is today. And I'm talking 10 to 15 years from now, when we're living in a highly advanced artificial intelligence society where you can click a button and an AI can write you a book. Then what do you need a writer for, right? I think writers, what it means to be a writer is going to be different. And I don't know that we are prepared for that. And so how can I skate to where the puck is going and figure out what that means, and how can I share that process in that journey, right? So those are my 5 strategy points, because I felt like I had to summarize that up, right? Become a world-class content creator, become a world-class marketer, become a technology-driven writer, become a data-driven writer, and become the writer of the future. That has been on my brain. Those statements are tattooed on my brain, and they have been my sole preoccupation for about the past 2 weeks, because I've been starting to work on projects, and I'm starting to implement them, and I'm really liking how this is going so far. And I apologize for some of that buzzing sound. It has something to do with my microphone, and then I think that has something to do with my computer. My computer is on its last legs, which is why I talked about buying a new laptop 2 episodes back. I cannot wait. This is probably the top 1 or 2 worst computers I've ever bought. I will never buy another MacBook Air. Anyway, that's a digression. What I wanted to spend some time on now, because I just felt like I had to go back over my strategy, is a new experiment on transparency that I'm trying. So it's interesting to talk about the things that you're doing, right? So last year I did a transparent course that basically walked through my thought process of writing a novel to market and writing to market without selling my soul. And I did YouTube videos on it. I did a course on it, and I offered that course for free, and I just let people in, and I just published my process of writing a book and so on and so forth, and it was pretty well received. And I'm finding that this transparency piece is pretty cool, and a lot of people are responding to it. And it's not because I'm arrogant and just want to say this is the right way to do it. It's just, how can you show your thought process, right? So that when someone asks you, how did you become successful? Instead of saying, I worked really hard, or coming up with some generic reason because of course you worked hard. Instead, being able to point to a specific process or a specific body of work that says, well, I don't know the number one factor that necessarily made me successful, but I documented my entire process over at blah, blah, blah.com. Go check it out. And so then more people can check out my YouTube channel. More people can check out my podcast, right? And then all the things that I'm doing right now that are in many ways kind of quiet, they can be more amplified, and it can be helpful to more people, right? That is pretty important to me. So what I'm doing now, my next project, I am writing a book for the Alliance of Independent Authors. And I don't think I've talked about this. I think I mentioned it, but I've gotten the green light to go forward. So Ally has commissioned me to write a book. Essentially, it's going to be the top self-publishing questions answered. So I am a co-host for the Ask Ally member Q&A podcast. I do that once a month with Orna Ross. She's the director of Ally. And so I have an opportunity to talk to Orna about once a month, and it's a really great opportunity. She is an extremely busy person. And so I literally maybe have 2 or 3 minutes to kind of pitch her an idea. And so I noticed that a lot of the questions that were coming in for the Ask Ally podcast were kind of the same. Many of them were exactly the same. And we tended to get a lot of the same questions over and over again. And so I proposed, why not write a book that we can direct Ally members to, because Ally members get access to all the books that Ally writes. They get access to that for free as a part of their membership. So it's a value add to the Ally membership. But then also it helps answer some of those questions that seem to keep coming up, no matter how many times we answer them, right? And so she was like, yeah, go ahead, go forward, get me. And so I wrote up a proposal and sent a proposal over to them, to the Ally team, and they're on board with it. And so now I've started to do, I've started to do competitive intelligence. So I was doing some market research, figuring out, are there any books on the market that are self-publishing answer books, right, that are specifically geared at self-published writers that have questions. And as part of that research, and this is where the data piece comes in, right? As part of that research, I found out that there were not a lot of books out there that were solely focused on data, or not data, but solely focused on questions, right? And answering questions that people had. So I think there were maybe only 2 or 3 books out there like that. But what I did find was that readers were actually pretty into the how-to books. So like a how-to book that answers all of their questions end to end, in many ways is exactly the same as a frequently asked question book. It's just presented in a different format. And so I thought, okay, what if I could find like a huge list of basic questions? Like, what if I could gather virtually any question that a self-published writer has within reason, right? Any question you could think of related to cover design, any question you could think of related to formatting, any question you could think of relating to writing, related to distribution of your book, related to editing, related to rights and contracts and copyright and business and self-care and scams and all those things. And what if I could get the biggest question base that you could ever think of? And what if I could write a book that answered all of those questions? Now, that sounds kind of crazy, right? So I was looking at all the different books, and they're all the ones I found that were pretty similar are great in their own right? But it was kind of hard because what would the unique selling proposition of this book be, right? Because it's a crowded genre. There are a lot of self-help books for writers out there, right? There are a lot of self-help books for beginning writers out there. And so how do I create that value proposition so that when a reader sees it, they're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. This is how this is different than all these other books that I've bought on the topic. And so I think that the way that I can add value for this particular book is to answer a lot of questions, like to answer questions that people didn't even think of, right? And so Ally is fortunate enough to be in the position where they have a lot of data around the questions that writers are asking on a regular basis. And so been working with the team to figure that out. And so I'm going to start on the book here Thursday, and I'm going to try to get through it pretty quick. So I'm starting off with a list of about 400 questions. So how do I figure out which ones I'm going to ultimately do? Because the book's probably not going to be 400 questions, but how do I whittle that down to the most essential ones? And then how do I make it thorough? And then what are some of the other competitive intelligence things that are going to make the book stand out, right? And so getting the data on the top questions that get asked, for example, or getting the data on the top podcast episodes, that's an important step to help me make data-driven decisions. And so that's the next book I'm writing. And so I'm actually looking forward to sitting down and starting to write another book again, because it's been a few months and I feel like things are calm again and I can really I'm going to try to just sit down and just fly through this. So I'm going to be curious how fast I can get through it. And so the last thing I want to just mention is, I've been using a planner now for about a week. So I talked last week about how I started using a planner. So I got a passion planner, and it's a great little book. And I've kind of got it organized, and it took me about an hour to go through and put in all the dates and holidays and all that stuff. And so I've kind of gotten into this ritual where I'm reading my planner every morning just to see what my day looks like. And I will say it has made me a little bit more organized. And it's definitely helped me sit down and reflect on a lot of the things that I'm doing. I feel like I can connect the dots in terms of all the things that I'm doing in my writing career a lot better than just a week ago, which I think is helpful. I don't know if it's just because I'm working on strategy or if it's because the planner helped, but I think I'm able to connect the dots just a little bit better. And I also ordered another planner, and this is I think it's the Passion Planner Daily. I've got a weekly one now and a monthly one, but this daily one's going to come in and it's going to let me track the things that I'm doing on a daily basis daily. And so I think that will also be helpful for me just as I sit down and reflect on the things that I'm doing throughout the day and any given week. I think reflection is really, really important, and I don't take enough time to reflect and think about things as they've happened in the moment, and I think I have an opportunity to do that a lot better. And so the planner is definitely helping me. It's kind of weird carrying it around. Like I have to remember to take it with me when I go to work, and I have to remember to take it with me when I take my daughter to class so I can look at it. And it's definitely a big adjustment for me, but I don't know what it is. It's just something about a paper physical planner. It just works so much better than like an app on your phone. Like I've had planner apps on my phone, and it just doesn't feel like I'm planning anything when I do it on my phone. Like it's strange. Like I can organize this little app on my phone, and I can make it remind me to do things. And in many respects, it's a lot easier and it's a lot more convenient because my phone is always with me everywhere I go. But there's something about it. When I write it down in my planner, I don't forget it. Like it's really strange. But when I put it in my phone, I can very easily forget it. And I have to set those reminders. So yeah, I definitely understand why people say I appreciate paper better, because I can understand it. There's just something about it. I don't know if it's the muscle memory or the hand-eye coordination or something, but it's just such an odd reversal for me because I used to be super 100% digital. I used to be on Team Digital. I would digitize everything, and I used to brag a lot about having a pure digital lifestyle and all this and that, and here I am completely going back to 1990, or at least in my life. I mean, planners have been around a lot longer than that. But yeah, it's kind of fun. So I would definitely encourage you to check out the Passion Planner if you are interested in planning, if you think that this will help you as you start thinking about the new year and thinking about ways that you can maybe be a little bit more organized, or maybe there's certain goals that you want to hit. I would definitely recommend it. I think this was created by, I think the woman that created it, she's a millennial and definitely has a lot of big ambitions and dreams. And I always like supporting people like that. If you look at the videos, and this is a great company. They've got a pretty cool mission, and I would just definitely check it out. That's the Passion Planner. So I'll drop a link to it in the video or the podcast show notes. Forget what I'm recording today. So with that, I am going to wrap it up this week. I hope everyone has a phenomenal week, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.